The door was barely hanging on its hinges. Nadia had seen poverty before. She had grown up watching her mother stretch a single pot of soup across 3 days, had known the particular shame of wearing shoes with cardboard insoles through a rainy season. But this was something else. This was a house that looked like it had given up. She stood at the edge of the cracked dirt path and stared. The walls were crumbling mud brick, patched in places with strips of old zinc that had rusted through. Weeds had pushed up through what might have once been a small garden. One window had no glass, just a torn piece of plastic taped across it, flapping in the late afternoon wind. Beside her, Tobias stood quietly, watching her face. She did not know he was watching. She was too busy trying to understand what she was seeing. "This is it," he said. His voice was careful, neutral, like a man waiting for a verdict. Nadia turned to look at him. He was dressed simply, worn jeans, a plain shirt, the same kind of clothes he always wore when they were together. She had never thought much of it. Some men just dressed simply. That was not a crime. But this house, "Tobias," she said slowly, "is this where you grew up? Or is this where you live now?" He met her eyes. Now. She looked back at the house. A lizard darted across the broken front step and disappeared into a crack in the wall. The plastic over the window snapped in the wind. Nadia had been dating Tobias Mensa for 4 months. They had met at the community clinic where she worked as a nurse. He had come in with a friend who needed stitches after a cooking accident, and he had sat in the waiting area for 2 hours, quietly reading a battered paperback, not complaining once. She had noticed that. In her experience, people who did not complain while waiting were either very patient or had trained themselves to expect very little from life. She had not yet decided which one applied to him. What she had decided was that he was kind, that he listened when she talked, really listened, not the kind of half-listening where a man's eyes drift to his phone, that he made her laugh in a way that surprised her, clean and sudden, like a door flying open in a room she'd forgotten about. She had not asked too many questions about his life outside of what he offered. He worked in logistics, he said. He was vague about the details in a way that she had assumed meant the work was unremarkable, not worth describing. He never talked about money. He never seemed to lack it either. Dinners out, small gifts. Nothing flashy, but nothing scarce. And now this house. "Come inside," Tobias said. She followed him in. The interior was dim. A single bulb hung from the ceiling on a fraying cord. The floor was concrete, swept clean but cracked in long, jagged lines across the surface. There was a narrow bed against one wall, a wooden chair, a small table with a hot plate on top. A plastic shelf held a few cans of food and a folded dish towel. Nadia stood in the center of the room and breathed in slowly. It smelled like dust and something faintly chemical like old paint. The ceiling had a watermark the size of a dinner plate spreading out from one corner. She did not say anything for a long moment. Tobias stood near the door, arms loose at his sides. There was something in his posture that she could not quite name. A readiness, almost, like a man bracing for something. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "About a year in this place," he said. "Before this, another room, not much different." Nadia nodded slowly. She walked to the plastic shelf and straightened the dish towel without thinking about it. Then she turned around. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I can make something. What do you have?" Tobias blinked. "Nadia, you have rice?" She was already opening cabinet doors. There were 2. One held a half bag of rice and a jar of tomato paste. The other held a single pot, a wooden spoon, and a small bottle of oil. "I have rice," she confirmed. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She set the pot on the hot plate and turned to face him. "Do you have onion?" He stared at her for a moment. Something moved across his face that she couldn't quite read. "There's onion," he said, "in the bag by the table." She found it. 1 onion, slightly soft but usable. She began to peel it over the small trash can in the corner, moving around the tiny space, like she had some experience with small kitchens, which she did. Tobias sat down in the wooden chair and watched her. He did not say much while she cooked. She talked about a difficult shift she'd had 2 days ago, about a patient who had recovered against expectations, about a recipe her mother used to make that she had been trying to recreate from memory for years. The words filled the room the way sound fills a small space, gently, without asking for too much. When she set the pot down on the table and they ate from mismatched bowls she'd found on the shelf, sitting across from each other in the dim yellow light, Tobias was very quiet. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "Nothing at all." But he was looking at her the way people look at something they are afraid to believe. She told her co-worker Priya about it the next Monday at the clinic. Priya was a practical woman, efficient with her opinions the way she was efficient with her charting. No extra words, no wasted motion. She listened to Nadia's account without interrupting, then set down her coffee cup and said, "So he's broke. I didn't say that. You described the house." "I described the house. That doesn't mean Nadia." Priya's voice was not unkind. A hot plate, one pot, a single bulb. "I'm not judging the man. I'm describing the situation." Nadia looked at the window. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with heat. "He's kind," she said. "Kind doesn't pay rent. Neither does cynicism." Priya sighed. "I just don't want you to end up carrying someone who isn't carrying himself. You already work long shifts. You're already tired. The last thing you need." "He didn't ask me for anything," Nadia said quietly. "Not once. He's never asked me for a single thing." Priya picked up her coffee again. "Yet," she said. Nadia did not respond to that. But it stayed with her the way certain words do, not because they're true, but because they're exactly what a part of you is already afraid of. She kept seeing Tobias. She told herself she was paying attention now, watching for signs. What she noticed was this. He always arrived on time. He always asked how her patients were doing, specifically, by name if she had mentioned them before. When she had a hard week, he did not try to fix it. He just sat with her, brought food, let her talk until she ran out of words. When she was happy, he was happy alongside her, not performing it, just genuinely there. She noticed something else too. His hands. They were not the hands of a man who did light work. There were old calluses on his palms, the kind that come from years of physical labor. But they were also, lately, softer than she would have expected. She filed this away without knowing what to do with it. One evening he took her to a small restaurant near the waterfront. Nothing expensive, plastic chairs and paper menus. But the fish was fresh, and the breeze came off the water, and everything felt easy and good. Halfway through the meal, a man in a very fine suit stopped at their table. "Tobias," the man said, surprised. "I didn't know you were." He stopped, looked between them. Something flickered in his expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt." "It's fine, Mr. Reeves," Tobias said. His voice had changed slightly, not cold, but careful. "Enjoy your evening." Mr. Reeves nodded, glanced at Nadia with an expression she couldn't interpret, something between confusion and deference, and moved on. "Who was that?" Nadia asked. "Someone I know through work," Tobias said. He picked up his fork and returned to his fish. Nadia watched him for a moment. "He looked at you strangely. People look at things strangely sometimes." She let it go, but she remembered it. The conversation happened on a Thursday evening. They were sitting outside on the low concrete step of Tobias's building, sharing a bottle of water and watching the neighborhood settle into night. Children being called in, a radio playing from somewhere down the lane, the smell of cooking from the house next door. It was one of those evenings that feels comfortable in the way only real familiarity can feel. Nadia had been thinking for 2 weeks about how to say what she wanted to say. She had practiced versions of it in her head, discarded most of them, and finally decided that the only way to say a true thing was to just say it. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to answer me honestly." Tobias set down the water bottle. "Okay, are you all right?" She turned to look at him. "Financially, are you struggling? Because if you are, I don't. I want you to know that it doesn't change anything for me. But I need to know the truth. Not because I want to take care of you or make it about money, because I can't be with someone who is hiding something from me. Whatever it is, just say it." Tobias was quiet for a long time. A dog trotted down the lane. The radio in the next house switched to a slower song. "Nadia," he said finally. Yes, he looked at her. In the dim evening light, his face was very still. "What if the truth is more complicated than you're expecting?" "Then it's complicated," she said. "I can handle complicated." He let out a long breath. Then he stood up from the step and held out his hand. "Come with me," he said. "There's something I want to show you." She did not know where they were going. He drove. and she noticed now that the car was newer than she had registered before, clean and quiet, the kind of unobtrusive quality that reads as expensive once you're paying attention. He drove for 20 minutes out of the neighborhood, through the commercial district, and into a part of the city she rarely came to, where the buildings were glass, and the streets were wide, and the lights were very bright. He pulled into the parking structure beneath a tall office building. Nadia looked up through the windshield. The building had a name on it in silver letters near the top floor, Mensa Group. Her brain moved slowly. She read the name twice. Tobias, she said. Yes, that says Mensa. Yes. Your last name is Mensa? Yes, he was watching her carefully. It does. She looked at him. What is this building? He was quiet for just a moment. It's mine, he said. The company. The building. The work I do in logistics, that's the simplified version. The actual version is that I run a supply chain and distribution company with operations in 6 countries. We employ about 1,100 people. I've been doing it for 9 years. The parking structure was very quiet around them. Somewhere in the distance, an elevator chimed. Nadia did not move. The house, she said. Is not where I live, he said. I have an apartment on the 14th floor of a building 3 blocks from here. The house, I kept it. I used to go there when I needed to think, when things got loud. He paused, and I started bringing people there, women I was seeing, to see what they would do, to test them. Yes. The word landed between them like something dropped from a height. Nadia looked out through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking structure. Her mind was running through things quickly. The mismatched bowls, the dish towel she had straightened, the onion she had peeled, the meal she had cooked in that hot plate kitchen while he sat in the wooden chair and watched her like she was something he was afraid to believe in. And the other women, she said, the ones before me. What did they do? Tobias was quiet. Most left within the first hour. One stayed through the night but spent most of it on her phone, complaining to her sister. One told me I should find a better place to live and offered to help me search for apartments. Nadia turned to look at him. And me. You cooked, he said. His voice had changed. It was lower now, and rougher, the way a voice gets when something underneath it has shifted. You cooked, and you talked about your patients, and you straightened the dish towel, and you asked me if I had enough oil for the onion. You made that room feel like a place where someone could live. He stopped. No one had ever done that. No one had ever just stayed and been normal and made it feel okay to be there. Nadia looked at her hands in her lap. She was feeling a number of things simultaneously, a kind of anger, slow and clean, and underneath it something more confusing, something that wanted to move toward him even now, which she was not sure what to do with. You let me walk into that house, she said. You let me feel worried about you. I spent 2 weeks wondering if you were all right. I was making plans in my head, Tobias. I was thinking about what I could do, whether there were resources I could connect you to, whether I should say something or wait for you to come to me. I know, he said. That wasn't fair. No, he said. It wasn't. She looked at him sharply. She had expected a defense, an explanation, a list of reasons why the test was necessary, why she should understand. He offered none of that. He just agreed with her. Then why? She asked. Why not just get to know me? Why not trust the process? Why does there have to be a test? Tobias was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, he said, because I've been burned, not once, multiple times by women who were warm and wonderful right up until they understood what I had, and then everything changed. The way they talked to me, the things they wanted, the plans they started making that had nothing to do with me as a person, and everything to do with what I represented. He looked at the steering wheel. I stopped trusting my own judgment. I needed a variable I could control. A variable, Nadia repeated. I know how that sounds. It sounds like you treated me like a science experiment. Yes, he said, it does. Another long silence. Then Nadia said, I'm angry at you. I know. I'm going to need some time to figure out how angry. That's fair, and I'm not. She stopped. Started again. I'm not going to pretend I don't understand why you did it. I work with people every day. I've watched people get hurt in every way you can imagine. I know what it does to someone when they stop being able to trust. She paused. That doesn't make it okay. But I understand it. Tobias turned to look at her. What happens now? he asked quietly. Nadia looked up at the silver letters on the building through the windshield. Mensa Group. She turned back to him. Now, she said, you take me to that apartment on the 14th floor, and you show me who you actually are. All of it. Not a test. Not a version you've arranged. The real thing. She held his gaze, and we see if this is real or not, on equal ground this time. Something in his face opened up then, a relief so visible it almost hurt to see. Like a man setting down something he had been carrying for a very long time. Okay, he said. And Tobias? Yes. If you ever test me again, she said quietly, I will leave and I won't look back. Do you understand me? Yes, he said. I understand you. The 14th floor apartment was quiet when they arrived. Large windows looked out over the city lights, gold and white spread out below like something poured. The rooms were simple but beautifully kept, clean lines, good furniture, books on every surface, the kind of home that told you exactly what kind of mind lived in it. Nadia walked through it slowly. She paused at the bookshelves. She looked at the photographs on one wall. A woman she didn't recognize who shared Tobias's. An older man with his same jaw. Family. She touched the spine of a book on logistics strategy that had been clearly read multiple times, the binding cracked, the pages marked with handwriting in the margins. She turned around. Tobias was standing in the center of the room, watching her. Your mother? She asked, nodding toward the photograph. Yes, he said. She passed 4 years ago. I'm sorry. She would have liked you, he said. She always said she'd know the right one by whether she could sit still in a quiet room. Nadia looked at him for a long moment. That's a strange thing to say. She was a strange woman, the best kind. Nadia smiled, just slightly. The anger was still there. She was not pretending it had dissolved, because that would not have been honest, and she had decided long ago that honesty was the one thing she would not sacrifice for the sake of someone else's comfort. But alongside the anger was something else. The same thing she had been feeling for 4 months, patient and persistent, refusing to be talked out of the room. Tell me about her, Nadia said. She settled onto the couch, tucking one leg beneath her. Tell me about your mother. Tobias sat down across from her, and for the first time, in the honest light of his real life, in his real home, with nothing arranged and nothing hidden, he began to talk. 6 months later, Nadia was in the middle of a difficult shift, a pediatric case that had taken everything she had, when she came out of the ward to find the hallway unusually quiet. The nurses at the station were looking at her with expressions she couldn't read. Priya was standing near the window with her arms crossed, and her face was doing something complicated. What? Nadia said. Priya pointed down the hall. Tobias was there. He was standing at the end of the corridor in a suit she had never seen him in, charcoal grey, clearly made for him, nothing like the worn jeans she had met him in. Behind him were 2 people she recognized, his sister Amora, who she had met twice over dinner, and his childhood friend Corey D., who had come to her birthday gathering and stayed until midnight talking about books. And beside them, to her absolute shock, was her own mother, Mama Delia, dressed in her good blue dress, the one she saved for weddings and funerals and occasions of weight. What is happening? Nadia said. She was not asking. Priya uncrossed her arms. I've been covering for him for 3 weeks, she said, just so you know. In case you're wondering about my loyalty. Priya, go, Priya said, and for once she was smiling. Nadia walked down the corridor slowly, because her legs had gone slightly uncertain and she needed to be careful. Tobias watched her come. When she was close enough, he reached out and took her hand. Then he went down on one knee. The corridor had gone fully silent. Somewhere behind her, she could hear one of the younger nurses exhale. Tobias looked up at her. I spent a long time, he said, being afraid of the wrong things. I was afraid of being used, and I missed everything that mattered. And then you walked into a broken-down house and cooked rice on a hot plate and made it feel like somewhere a person could belong. He stopped. His voice was steady, but only just. I don't want to spend any more time being afraid. I want to spend whatever time I have being certain about you, because I'm certain. He opened the box. The ring was simple, not overwhelming, not performative. It was exactly the kind of thing she would have chosen herself. Nadia looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at her mother, who was pressing both hands flat against her sternum, the way she did when she was trying to hold herself together. Then she looked back at Tobias. "You already know what I'm going to say," she said. "I hope I do," he said. "But I'd like to hear it." She squeezed his hand. "Yes," she said. "Obviously, yes." Her mother made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a laugh. Priya slow-clapped from down the hall, which was exactly the kind of thing Priya would do. Amora covered her mouth. Koraid said something under his breath that made Tobias laugh. Sudden and full, the kind of laugh she had loved from the first time she heard it. Clean and unguarded, nothing held back. The ring settled onto her finger, and Nadia stood in the corridor of the clinic, where she had always worked, in the ordinary scrubs of her ordinary life, and felt something she had no better word for than right. The deep, quiet, unshakable rightness of a life aligning with itself. Some people go looking for love in grand gestures and shining surfaces. Nadia had found hers in a cracked floor room, over a pot of rice and one soft onion, in the company of a man who had been watching her choose, and hadn't yet understood that she had been choosing all along.